Hello, guys. Good evening. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Francisca. Hello, Favor. Hello, the tiny chair talk. Hello, Elizabeth. Good evening. Hi. How are you guys doing? How was your day? So, I'm just going to give it like 1 minute, then we'll start. It was kind of a cool day where I'm at. How was it for you guys? Was it sunny or was it cool? I'm actually surprised that it's still raining like this time of year. I mean, I don't know. Okay, maybe I'm not used to it. Yeah, it rained on my end too, so it's kind of cool where I am. But I don't know. Is it normally this rainy this time of year? Like, are we not supposed to be getting to the time where the weather is like dry and everything? Well, it rained today, and to be honest, I'm not. I don't hate. I actually like the rain though. Yeah, I like the weather because it's cool. If once it's Hamatan starts now, Hamatan doesn't last long, and then we get into dry season proper. But like rainy season, the only thing is that it can disrupt your plans, oh, but it's cool, it's nice, plants are flourishing, everything is it's like my favorite season. It's just like can disrupt your plans, like if you go out or if you need to go to the market, if you need to get things done and you're not mobile, it's not very pretty. All right, guys. I think we can start. Just give me a minute. Let me open my slides, and then we'll start. So today we're actually going to be talking about hair treatments. So I know I had talked in the last class. I had actually mentioned that I was going to have a live where I talk about like I give recipes for like different hair needs and you know what hair type they should be used for and things like that. So I've really been thinking about it that if I do that on live, I don't know if it's going to be productive because if I do it on live, I won't necessarily be able to I won't necessarily be able to do everything and show you guys the whole process for everything. I don't think I'll be able to fit all the recipes into 30 minutes. So it's either I do two episodes, like I break the episodes into two, or I do a couple of short videos. I'm still thinking though. I have one more um I have another session with you guys before I do that session. But today we're going to be talking about treatment. What I'm talking about are DIY recipes. But today we're going to be talking about generally hair treatments because it's a precursor to that. There is another class that I wanted to do before this class, but because I want it to be practical and because my hair is in a style right now, I won't be able to do it. So I just decided to move it and bring this one forward. So today we're going to be talking about hair treatments, and I wanted to kind of define. I wanted to define hair treatments, the different type of hair treatments, and when it's best to use them or how to use them and all that stuff. Yeah, but let's just understand which is which. I feel it will. Sorry, there's something in my mouth. I feel it will help to give us a little bit of clarity if we know what each of the hair treatments are and how they can help us or what they are used for and when to use them and things like that. So once again, welcome to our Hair Growth 101 class, and it's presented by me. I'm taking you guys through the foundation of everything that you need to know and understand to be able to grow your own hair. And I'm trying to take everything so that you understand it for yourself, into growing your natural hair. So even if you're not going to be doing these recipes by yourself, when you're talking to someone who is going to be doing these treatments by yourself, by who's going to be doing the treatments for you, you're not going to be in a situation where they are trying to bamboozle you and mislead you, putting the wrong products in your hair and damage your hair, because we have a lot of that here. So just trying to take out the confusion in growing your afro-textured hair. That's what this series is about. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about hair treatments. We're going to be talking about what they are, the types of hair treatments, and specific treatments for your hair type. Okay, so let's get straight into it. So, a hair treatment is a specialized procedure or product designed to improve the health, appearance, and texture of hair by addressing specific hair concerns like dryness, damage, frizz, or scalp issues. Okay. So, as the definition has said, it's specific, right? So that's the reason why there are different hair treatments. Now, right, they are treatments that are multi-purpose. So, for example, a treatment can have growth properties and it can also have thickening properties. But I kind of grouped them into different groups. I think I grouped them into six different categories. And as I define each of them one by one, you would understand why I grouped them into these categories. Okay. So are you guys with me? Is everybody following along? If you have any questions, please note them down. I had a little bit of a mishap with my live last week. So I wasn't able to take questions. If you're in live last week and you had some questions, please drop them in the comments section. I will take last week's questions and this week's questions too. So just drop them in the comments when it's time for me to take questions. I'll address everything. Yeah, so let's go back to today's topic. So now, right, we have conditioning treatments. Now, if you remember in our what is a hair routine, we talked about conditioning treatments. We talk about what conditioning is, and I gave like a general definition for it. So one thing that is very common in natural hair community is that there happens to be some intermingling with some definitions, right? But and in that class, I mentioned that that conditioning was all encompassing, and it also included, conditioners as well as oils and butters, as far as they had a softening, nutrient nourishing ability to the hair. I termed them underneath that hair routine category as conditioning treatments. But now I am going more, I'm dividing them more in this class, right? The different kinds of treatments that they can be, right? I'm pretty sure if we want to go granular, right, you could probably break this up some more, but I feel like this is to a very large extent encompassing, right? So now specifically for this particular conditioning treatment, right? Um, what I'm referencing are our conditioners, our standard conditioners that come in as, leave-in conditioners, rinse-off conditioners, deep conditioners. Now, how many of us can testify that when we apply these conditioners to our hair, they have a sort of silkening effect on our hair? Like if your hair was just like maybe a little bit dry, a little bit, they have this sort of silkening effect on the hair, right? So this effect is quote and unquote what we call conditioning. And what causes this effect is as a result of conditioning agents, some, but not all and not limited to. But conditioning agents tend to have cations. That is what makes them conditioning. Cationic agents, that is positively charged ingredients that bind to the hair strands and help to give it that softening, silky, luscious feel that we tend to have on the hair, right? Another thing or another ingredient that can give that effect is actually oils, some certain oils, or just let me just say oils, butters, triglycerides, fatty acids, right? But specifically, right, in this particular one specifically, I am talking about cationic agents, right? Cationic ingredients that have that positively charged ion that can bind to the hair strands, right? So that's what I mean in this conditioning treatment. As I said, a conditioning treatment is an intensive hair care process that uses rich, nourishing products, usually containing a positive charge, to deeply moisturize, repair damage, and improve hair's health and manageability. So, a lot of us can testify to the fact that with the kind of hair we have, a lot of times, if we don't add a conditioner to it, right, we cannot really experience, easy detangling, easy combing, and things like that. So conditioning treatments are a very important part of every natural's hair routine. Dare I say they're compulsory parts. You know, this might be debatable, but personally, especially like if you're low porosity or if your hair is thicker, you definitely need it. Okay, so we're moving on to the next one, which is oil treatments. So now I'm sure you guys must have heard stuff like pre-poo, hot oil treatments, um just you must have heard terms like that, and sometimes they're used interchangeably. So sometimes someone can say, "Oh, okay, you do your hot oil treatment post wash." Some people can say you do your hot oil treatment pre wash. Some people can say, pre poo is literally the treatment you do before you wash your hair. A lot of all these things are actually subjective, but let us just talk about what oils do in your hair, right? So different oils have different properties. They have different types of fatty acid chains, different properties, right? That make some of them more penetrating, make some of them have strengthening properties, make some of them have growth properties, and then make some of them have conditioning slash softening properties, right? But ultimately, because of the nature of oils, that is, oils are hydrophobic, right? So they repel water. What they do is they help your hair keep a balance between the, sorry, excuse me, they help your hair keep a balance between the amount of oils that can actually penetrate into your hair strands, because if there's too much water in your hair strand, that can cause damage. That can cause something called hygral fatigue, which is your hair is exposed to too much water, so it makes it like very weak and it makes it easy to break. Imagine spaghetti that is overcooked. So it's overcooked, and compared to like when it was raw and harder, right? It's now just pete pete. Excuse my language, but it's now just pete pete. So the same thing kind of happens with your hair if it absorbs too much water. So that is why typically people tend to favor oil treatments when they are people tend to favor oil treatments before your pre-poo. But like I said, depending on the oil and depending on the characteristics of the oil, because some oils do have conditioning properties, some oils have softening properties. You can actually use them post wash to give you sort of like a conditioning effect. But the downside to using oils post wash and having that be like the main conditioning thing that you're using is that oils have like this oily residue that they leave on your hair, so it can potentially, oils and butters can potentially stain, like if you, even though your hair is dry, as far as you put your hair on a place, you rest your head on a place, it can stain it, and that can be awfully inconvenient sometimes. But oils can also serve as conditioning treatments. Now, because of the way oils are, like they're an organic compound and a lot of herbs are soluble in them, that is what forms the basis, because people use the oils to absorb beneficial ingredients in the herbal powders, right? And then they can apply it to their scalp and also apply it to their hair to impact the properties of the herbs into their hair and their scalp, right? Okay, so now we're going to go into strengthening treatments, and I think I kind of entered into it a little bit when I was talking about the oils. So now, right, as the word implies, strengthening. So you guys remember when I was talking about spaghetti just now, and I was saying if it's overcooked, it gets to be soft and very mushy, right? So strengthening treatment, if it's mushy, that's not a good thing. If it's too hard, that's not a good thing. The idea is to keep a balance between the too hard and the too soft, right? To be somewhere in the middle when it comes to the texture of our hair. So now, if you guys can remember in our hair typing class when I was talking about how when I was talking about the um the different hair types, their hair, the the fineness of the strands, the thickness of the strand, and so on and so forth, right? And then also when I was talking about density, I don't know if it was in that video or the video about hair growth, but I know I did mention that there are things that you can do, lifestyle changes, some herbs that have scientifically been proven to actually improves people's thickness and improves people's volume, right? The thickness of your hair strand and the volume of your hair. So that is where these treatments come in. To a very large extent, right? These strengthening treatments can be herbs, they can be plants, um, and yeah, they can be herbs and they can be plants, right? Now, strengthening treatments and protein treatments are somewhat similar, but there's a little bit of a difference, and that is why I separated them. So now, for your strengthening treatment, a lot of herbs or naturally have that ability to coat your hair strands, to fill in the gaps of damage, to improve the thickness of your hair and stuff like that. So we have plants like henna, we have plants like henna, we have plants like moringa, we have plants like chebe, right? Those are strengthening plants, right? That you can use them in the form of a mask. That is, you just mix them, maybe mix them with water or mix them with things like aloe vera gel, or you mix them with oils and then you apply it to your hair and they give your hair that effect. A lot of these plants, right, they are multi-purpose, so they can do more than one thing. So a lot of these plants might have growth properties as well as strengthening properties, right? So these treatments falling. So any treatments that you're doing, right, major property of that plant is to strengthen the hair, to reinforce the structure of the hair, right? To improve the structural integrity of the hair, to increase, no, I wouldn't say increase volume, but okay, increase volume will be more of growth treatment. But for strengthening the hair, right? Conditioning the hair, keeping the hair strong, preventing breakage, those strengthening treatments, they all fall under this. And a lot of them are herbal treatments. Not all of them, right? Some of them, like who here can remember rice water, right? Although rice water is a protein, right? And there is still a lot, it's still considered debate in natural community till today. Some people will go and mix egg in their um what they call it. They'll just, some of all these DIY, they'll mix it in their mask and they'll say, oh, they're doing a protein treatment, please eat your egg. Because the molecules of protein in things like that, even the rice water and things like those masks where you add egg and mayonnaise, they are too large. They can't penetrate into the hair strand. So they just stay on the hair, and then when you rinse it off, you rinsed it all away. So To be honest, they are actually futile. But I would, in this grouping, right, I'll group rice water under, you know, a strengthening treatment, not necessarily a protein treatment, because I have come face to face with customers that have had extreme strengthening, like extreme, that to the point where this thing coated their hair strands so much that it was no longer absorbing, it was no longer allowing moisture to enter into the hair strands, right? So that's the thing with a lot of these DIYs. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know what the chemical compound that is being released when you're doing these processes, more harm than good to your hair, right? We're moving on to protein treatments, right? Now, proper protein treatments are treatments that contain hydrolyzed proteins. Hydrolyzed proteins are proteins that have been broken down. They are proteins that have been broken down, and those are the kind of proteins that your hair can use. So what they do is they are broken down, they are smaller, they can absorb into your hair strands, and they go into places like sites of damage and they fill it up, right? They're like a temporary fix. They're like a temporary fix and they help to, improve the structural integrity. Hello, blessing. They help to improve the structural integrity of the hair. And they do that by filling up the gaps, filling up the places of damage in the hair. That's what protein treatments are. So exclusively, right? While the strengthening treatments, the herbs and all that holistically with how they're structured and everything, they can, have that strengthening ability. Proteins are specifically hydrolyzed proteins that they are broken down, like the long chain fatty acid chain of proteins are broken down and they absorb into our hair and they deposit in damage to prevent damage, right? Okay. So let's move on to the other ones. So we have scalp treatment. By the definition of scalp treatment, I would say washing your hair is a scalp treatment because we all know that if your hair is dirty and it can be a breeding ground for microorganisms, it can be a breeding ground for all sorts of scalp diseases, right? So scalp treatments are specialized service or products designed to improve the health of the scalp. Now, they are specific pathology. Please, raw eggs mixed with avocado. Is it protein treatment or strengthening treatment? So that's what I was trying to explain. Please eat your eggs. It will do you much better internally than it would if you put it on your hair externally. Because if you eat the egg, you would receive all the nutrients from the egg and then it will go to all the places in your body that needs those nutrients. But if you put it on your hair, it is too big. The protein in the egg is too big to absorb into your hair strands, right? So it's just going to sit on top. And when you rinse it, the protein is going to be rinsed off, right? So eggs do not count as a protein treatment. Now, as for avocado, because avocado contains avocado oil, and avocado oil is a very nice conditioner, right? It's a very nice moisturizer and conditioner for the hair strands, right? So I would say because of the oil in avocado, right? You can place avocado treatments probably under um, you know, either the oil treatment because of how I define conditioning treatment, I won't put it under conditioning treatment. So you can put it under oil treatment, right? Or the strengthening treatment, just because of how I define strengthening treatment, because that's where I grouped most of the herbs and things like that, right? So those herbal things that we can use. So any DIY you can think of, things like okra. Okay, no, okra is more of a detangler, but a lot of all these plants, multifaceted, they tend to have properties help to improve the structural integrity of the hair and just improve the overall health of the hair. So we can probably group it under strengthening. I hope I answered your question. So going back to what I was saying with the scalp treatments, right? So there are a lot of things, there are a lot of diseases that affect the scalp. Most people, when they're having any issues with their scalp, actually think that, oh, it's dandruff. No, there are different things that can actually happen to your scalp, and I'm not going to go too much into that. I'm going to have another class where I talk about all the possible diseases that could affect the scalp, but that's not for today. So there's seborrheic dermatitis, there's psoriasis, there's the common dandruff, there's ringworm. You could even have, you know some other form of fungus on your scalp, right? That is where a dermatologist comes in, because sometimes there are some testings that needs to be done to determine, especially all those type of ones that are resistant to like over the counter treatment, right? So, but typically scalp treatments are usually antibacterial, antifungal, and anti-inflammatory. So their job is to help you calm your scalp, reduce itching, kill any bacteria that may be breathing on your scalp, and help to return the balance in your scalp, right? So that is why I said a shampoo will actually fall under scalp treatment because of its cleansing properties. So now there are also some herbs that have high antibacterial and high antifungal properties. For example, neem. A lot of us have heard about neem and its properties, and how it helps to, how its antibacterial and antifungal properties. Another good example of, a herb that is good for your scalp is aloe vera. Aloe vera is good for your scalp because aloe vera has an acidic pH. And you guys remember from the previous class where I talked about pH and the scalp and things like that, I talked about how ACV can help you, kill germs, detox your scalp because of how it's, affects the bacteria that tend to be on your scalp, right? So aloe vera also has that effect. Aloe vera also has some enzymes. So aloe vera is not just good for your scalp, it's good for it's not just good for your scalp, it's good for your hair itself, because that property, that pH property that helps it to pH, right, also does the same for your cuticles. It helps to close your cuticles. I hope you guys are following me, right? So those ones, there are more, right? These are just examples. I'm just trying to open you guys' mind to what a scalp treatment could be, right? But typically a scalp treatment is usually addressing a scalp disease, or it's just trying to give relief. For example, somebody that is having excessive itching would need a scalp treatment. Somebody that is having excessive flaking will need a scalp treatment. Somebody that their hair is having a foul smell will need a scalp treatment. Some of these things, a basic shampoo can help, but some of them, they need to go a step further with, a herbal combination, or a couple more things, maybe like a cleansing process, a herbal combination, and then a maybe an over the counter on what the condition is. So now going on to the last and final one, we have the growth treatment. So as the name implies, sorry, excuse me, as the name implies, the growth treatment is for growth. Now, um, no, because undergrowth hairs are actually not a hair disease. So what I'd hope I understand what you mean by undergrowth, because people use this differently. But I've had customers, the two ways I've seen people use undergrowth is that they have natural hair, and anytime they plait their natural hair, they notice that there are these short hairs, right? That are just always there, and it doesn't make their hair look neat. That's how some people describe undergrowth. Then another one is, when you relax your hair and when the hair is growing out. If it's for the relaxed hair and when the hair is growing out, I have a video on what is natural hair. I feel like that would explain that better, because your undergrowth is normal. It's a normal process. If your hair is always growing, when you relax the hair that is outside, right? The hair that is growing out of your scalp. It's going to be your natural hair because that's how God made you. So you would understand better if you watch that video on what is natural hair. So if it's that you're talking about, there's no treatment for it unless you want to continue relaxers or you want to do maybe a conditioning treatment to make the new growth softer and manage the two growths. But if it's the one that is undergrowth with natural hair, there's also no treatment for it, but it is not a problem, right? Two ways you can solve it. If you have a very good hairstylist that knows how to pick hair, but is not their hand is not too tight, that's also a good way to solve that issue, right? But it is just that undergrowth you're seeing is just new growth, right? And it's at a shorter length compared to the other strands of your hair. So maybe you can include strengthening treatments so that that new growth grows longer and then it can start matching up with the other lengths of your hair and growing together and all that. But there is no cure for it because technically it is not a disease. I hope that makes sense. So, as I was saying, growth treatments, as the name implies, they are for growth, right? So now, one thing that is very common, very, very, very common with us in Nigeria, almost, let's just say, I don't have the statistics, this is just me over the top of my head, but you see like 1 in 5 women, their hairline is going back, right? And that is actually as a result of tension when the hair is too tight. That one is traction alopecia, right? So a lot of women are trying to find solutions to that. So a typical growth treatment would help to restore the damage because that one is damage. It's actually physical damage that caused that, right? And some of them it can be at the point where it is beyond saving. But most people, if they stop what is causing that damage and they treat it, it can grow back, right? So growth treatments generally they help to nourish your hair follicles. You can also, what is natural hair, what is hair growth? Those two classes talk about your hair follicles. They help to nourish and why they're important in hair growth. They help to nourish your hair follicles. Now, right? Um, if you have one hair follicle, right? If your hair follicle is not well nourished, it can bring out a very weak type of hair that can easily break or hair that will be like that undergrowth. But if your hair follicle is well nourished, it can get to the point where it's not just bringing out a thick strand of hair, it can bring out multiple strands of hair, right? So your hair follicle can be so healthy that it's not one follicle in your head bringing out one strand of hair. One follicle can bring out 3 strands of hair, can bring out 4 strands of hair, right? So even if your hair follicles are fixed, once you give it nutrients, you load it with nutrients, right? It can increase the amount of hair strands per follicle, right? So growth treatments are actually all encompassing. They could actually include the specific nutrients that your hair is lacking, right? Now, this is for standard cosmetic formulations because you may not necessarily be able to get this in DIYs, right? But then there are also herbs, there are oils, there are herbs that have growth properties, that have really nourishing properties that your hair follicles need. I think we've heard a lot of them. We heard about stuff like onion juice. We've heard about stuff like cayenne. We've heard about stuff like amla. We've heard about stuff like moringa. Moringa is also good for growth. We've heard about stuff like even aloe vera is also very good for growth, right? So all these treatments, whether it be herbs or oils, coconut oil is also good for growth, right? Yes, all these things that you could use, right, to boost the health of your follicle, to boost your scalp health, right, to help your hair to grow, to make it grow faster, to make it grow thicker. Now, these things fall under growth treatments. So they can come in the form of herbs, they can come in the form of oils, they can come Then they can also come in the form of butters, and then they can come in the form of like maybe concentrates. This that one is for formulators. That one is, when you know what you need to get specific ingredients that have growth properties. Research has shown they have growth properties. They can be in growth treatment using formulators because you don't know how to use it where you do more hand and. So now, right? I just wanted us to have an overview on the type of treatment. Some of these treatments can be they can intertwine each other. For example, a treatment can be a growth treatment and it can also be a scalp treatment. A treatment can be an oil treatment and it can also be a strengthening treatment. For example, if you use ginger juice, ginger has antibacterial properties. So ginger juice is more for like scalp. It's good for your scalp, right? So I don't want to go into too much into like the properties of each of these things and how they are, because like I said, I'm going to have a separate other class where I'm going to be talking about them. So I don't want it to take away from this particular class. I'm going to have a separate other class where I will be giving people DIY recipes, talking about like each of the ingredients, talking about their benefits and how to use to be able to get the best results from them. So as I was saying, some of these herbs, some of these treatments, they can be intertwined, and there are oils that have moisturizing properties. So if you add those oils to your conditioner, they will help to make it more conditioning, right? There are also butters that have that effect. So one treatment can be an oil treatment, and it can also be a strengthening treatment, and it can also be a scalp treatment. It just depends on the ingredients that you're mixing together. So now let's go to the next slide, right? I wanted to just specifically talk the kind of treatments you should be looking out for depending on your hair's porosity. Now, your hair's porosity is not the only thing, right? If you have your hair's thickness is also another factor you have to consider when looking at treatments. Your hair's thickness, your hair's density, and generally what goal you're trying to achieve. Example, if you're trying to achieve length, right? And maybe you want to achieve it in a shorter period of time, you should go for growth treatment as well as conditioning treatment as well as strengthening treatments, right? If you want to achieve thicker hair, you can choose to just focus on strengthening treatments and growth treatments, right? If you just want your scalp to stop itching, you want to stop having scalp issues, you can choose to focus on scalp treatments and conditioning treatments, right? So your goal actually influences the kind of treatments you're using per time and how that will eventually marry into what routine you're going to do. If you want to understand what routine is, how to create your routine, what routine is all about, there's also the live class on routine. Go and catch up on it, and then you'd be able to make sense of that. Okay, so now I just talked about hair type, but even though I don't have a thickness here, I think I'll talk about it like hair thickness and hair density. I think I'll talk about it and would wrap up quickly because I'm way past my time. So now, if you have low porosity hair, you actually need to do more of conditioning treatments and oil treatments, hot oil treatments to be specific. Because if you guys remember when I was talking about low porosity in our last class, I talked about how heat is your best friend, right? Because it helps to open up your cuticles to let the product absorb in. So hot oil treatments, depending whatever type of oil you're using, right? It should be conditioning oils, it should be softening and moisturizing oils, but that would really work for low porosity hair and people that have thicker hairs, right? Those oil treatments would really help you. It will make manageability a whole lot easier, right? Now, one thing I have found, not with people with low porosity hair, but people with higher hair density, they tend to have very high scalp sebum production, and that happens to attract the bacteria that causes dandruff and seborrheic dermatitis. So people with thicker hair, that's people with high volume hair, right? They tend to need scalp treatments. They need to wash their hair more often, and they also tend to need like one or two treatments that will just help to keep that bacteria at bay and just keep their scalp clean, right? So, like I said, depending on your goals, you might want to add growth treatments or oil treatments. But if you have low porosity hair, you should really prioritize oil treatments, conditioning treatments. And then if you have low porosity hair and the hair is thick, you should prioritize scalp treatments too, right? So I've found, if you're doing all that, you'll find that you don't even really need to worry about them hair growth oils and things like that. If you're doing the conditioning treatment, the oil treatments, and the scalp treatments, you find that your hair can actually grow with ease without you having to do too much, right? Because you're just making sure that as the hair is growing, you're retaining the length, right? That is people that tend to have thicker hair and all that. So the goal is making sure that the hair is soft so that it's not breaking, and then keeping the hair healthy and things like that. So now for high porosity hair, um protein treatments are very important, or you need protein treatments more. Now, sorry, let me backtrack a bit. Low porosity hair also needs protein treatments, but not as often as high porosity hair needs protein treatments. Low porosity hair can afford to do protein treatments once in 2 to 3 months, but for high porosity, you should probably involve protein in all your treatments. Even like your typical conditioning treatment, you should involve protein, right? So for high porosity hair, you can involve protein treatment. Protein treatments are important. Of course, because your hair is natural, everybody, like I said, as far as your hair is natural, conditioning treatments are super important. So now, if you're high porosity but low volume, you might want to involve growth treatments and then strengthening treatments, because they tend to have thickening properties, right? And then, like I said, protein treatments are a must if your hair is high porosity, and conditioning treatments are a must if you have natural hair. Conditioning treatments are a must for any hair type, actually, if I'm being honest. But you might want to prioritize strengthening treatments and growth treatments depending on where you fall. If your hair is maybe on the finer side, or if your hair is on the low volume side, you definitely should involve strengthening treatments and growth treatments alongside your protein treatments and conditioning treatments. So that is it. I can have questions now. I can take your questions. Um, so I'm waiting for you guys. I'll take your questions, and then um I guess we can call it a day. But I would really appreciate it if you guys watch that video on like hair typing and hair routine, because going forward, right, I'm going to be referencing it a lot. It is going to help you know where you fall and know the things you need, right? So that you're not confused. So it's those first couple of classes, they are very, very important. Just in your spare time, you can just be playing this in the background and just listen to it. It will really, really help you to first know where your hair falls, understand why all those things are important, and how they can help you achieve your hair goals. So, guys, I'm just going to give like the next 2 minutes. I'm waiting for your questions. So I'll answer questions, and then we can call it a day. Okay, so for fine strands and low density, right? I would advise growth treatments, definitely growth treatments. I will also advise strengthening treatments, and then I will advise protein treatments. Okay, so for when you have braids in, right, I would advise you don't do like you're not too heavy on your moisturizing process. So what I typically advise is that before you install those braids, make sure you have done a that penetrates into your hair. You put you put in your oils and your butters, right? Now, during the space of when your braids are in, right? All you really need to do is more like a refresher. You shouldn't be putting too much products on there because it can just weigh on the hair and defeat its purpose. But if your foundation is already solid, that is, you've done a very good treatment on your hair before you install those braids, right? What you might just need to do in between, let's say 1 to 2 times a week, is to use like a probably like a hair tea, something base, something light, like a hair tea or just plain water. But I would advise a hair tea. Spray it on your hair strands, right? Try to sorry, excuse me, try to focus on where your hair strands are, right? So if you have waist length braids and your hair, just gets, to your ankle or to your shoulder, you don't need to be applying all the way down to your waist because your hair doesn't end there. And then there are people that do this method where they kind of hide the hair strands inside the extensions. What you can just do is make sure you're applying the product to that underside part of your hair. So you stop where your hair stops and make the products that you're adding not too heavy, right? So that's how you can moisturize your hair when you have it in braids. How long should we carry protective styles for effect, growth, and results? Because I carry mine for 2 to 4 weeks. Okay, so I've actually talked about protective styles a bit. I'm going to have another class where I go into protective styles in depth. But to answer your question, right? First of all, protective styles are styles that protect your hair strands. They are not limited to you wearing wig and you wearing braids, like adding extensions to your hair and having them be very long. So um all back can be a protective style. What I have on right now is a protective style. Even if I have nothing added to my hair is just in a curl style, that can be a protective style, right? So um what you're calling a protective style, if it is always putting your hair in what they call it, if it's always putting your hair in braids, long extensions that are pulling on your hair, you may be doing more harm than good, right? So first things first. So now, once we've addressed that the style that we're doing is actually protecting our hair and not just damaging our hair in the guise of a protective style, then it will now depend. I would say it will depend on your hair type, right? So if you have fine hair strands, I w- I would say, you know you shouldn't be keeping, if you're actually going to do braids with extensions, you shouldn't be keeping them in for so long, right? But there are a lot of factors that determine whether 2 to 4 weeks is fine. But 2 weeks is a good 2 weeks is a good time, right? For you to keep your hair, if you've treated prior to the 2 weeks and after the 2 weeks ends you also treat, 2 weeks is a good time. 4 weeks is also not bad, but it depends on the style, right? It depends on the style that you put it in. So like I said, I'm going to have a more detailed protective style class where we're going to be breaking down all the protective styles, them frontals or them glueless or them wigs, or we'll also still talk about how you can use wigs to grow your hair. I use olive oil and warm before using it to lighten the thickness. Is it oil? Yeah, olive oil is actually fine for low porous hair because it's quite moisturizing. But I think you should also add a conditioner to that. And then Olive oil is olive oil. If you heat it up, it's not going to necessarily change the density of the oil, right? It's going to aid its penetration, but it's not necessarily going to change the density. So you should be light on it. That is, you shouldn't use too much, because when you use too much, it's actually like you're wasting it. A lot of it doesn't go into your hair strands; it just sits on top, right? But if you're using olive oil is not bad. But I would probably advise that you add a conditioner, or maybe you infuse it with some nice herbs, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So, yeah, I hope I've answered all your questions. Do you have any more questions? I'm just going to give you 30 seconds and then we can call it a day. Thank you guys so much for joining the class today. If you haven't, please make sure you like, you subscribe, and then invite your friends, invite anybody that you know that would like to learn about hair, to follow the page, join the live. Today's class was really nice and it was very interactive. Please, let's keep this energy. I loved it today. um Next week, invite your friends, add them to the group. you know let's keep things interactive, and the more you guys ask me questions and just give me this energy, helps me to know what you guys need to see, what you guys need me to talk about and stuff like that. So thank you so much for coming to today's class. Please don't forget to like, to subscribe, and to share. Thank you so much, guys. Good night.